Hi, I'm Gloria.
And I'm Mari.
Just two women trying to inspire ourselves
and others.
Okay, so we left off after the whole college.
Oh my goodness.
Going off to college conversation. Anyhow, the question that we posed was, what change has occurred in your life that has allowed for growth?
Yeah, I love that.
And I think you had something in mind, something that has happened.
Yeah, so we were mentioning this and I was talking about this. So some of you may know or some may not. I am a homeschool mom. And that was a major change in my life. So, it's funny because many years ago, Rich had mentioned to me that he would love to homeschool our kids. I mean, I'm talking about like before we had children, we were dating. We weren't even married. And I was okay, sorry, that's just never gonna happen. I literally said to him, I'm like, if our kids are gonna be homeschooled, they're gonna be homeschooled by you. And so, and anyways, sometimes I think we should watch what we say, right? Because maybe we have to eat our words. And so 2 years ago, I enrolled Julian in pre-K 3. He was going to do pre-K 2, but then it was the pandemic and he was so, I got pregnant and I was so sick. And so morning sickness, I decided to not enroll him and keep him home with me another year.
But he never really went.
No, he never started.
I was going to say, I didn't remember
he never started. I
that.
literally found out I was pregnant and I was just like, I'm not doing this. I'm not driving. I feel so nauseous and, And so I enrolled him in pre-K 3, like a little preschool close to our house. And, it didn't necessarily go how I imagined it would go. And I think, he had a hard time adjusting to being with people other than me. But beyond that, I think part of it was he had a lot of change in his little 3-year-old life. He had just had a baby sister, had been potty trained, changed to a toddler bed, started school. There was just so much change. And so that was too much. And so he was having a really hard time adjusting. And he really wasn't challenged because it was kind of just like one of these little preschools.
Right, more like a daycare.
Yeah, I mean, it was a school because they had kids up to kindergarten and first grade, I think even. But they weren't doing things that he knew everything that they were doing. And Julian's one of those kids that he really needs to be challenged. He just does. And so it's interesting. He was having a lot of trouble and even starting to hit kids, things he had never, ever done. And it's like, is he socialized? Does he hang out with children? I'm like, he's with kids all the time. He has cousins. He's we have so many friends with kids his age, and he has never done anything like that. And so it's so interesting because I started to almost resent, him going and picking him up and what are they going to tell me today? And I remember there was one day I was driving to go pick him up and it was God, the voice of God, literally so clearly. He said, it was I want you to homeschool Julian. It was just this, I remember even thinking, that can't possibly be. But it was just this quiet voice inside of me that was it's what's best for your son. And I'm one of those people that I truly believe that when we are obedient to the calling that God has on our life, that things just align and work better. And that if we're out of alignment with what he desires for us, with what our true purpose is, that, he doesn't maybe bless it the same way. And
saying how you felt like you heard a little voice telling you that. I had read the other day something about when you tell God your plans, he just laughs at you sometimes and says,
well, yeah, there you go.
No, this is my plan.
And it's so interesting because I was oh, now he's going to be in preschool and I'm finally going to get to work my business a certain way. And so we decided, so literally that was on a Monday. And all this stuff happened and they wanted to have a parent teacher conference with us, and mind you, I'm he's 3. But we decided to pull him from the preschool that Wednesday. And that day, as I have a little handprint of him from that day, because I wanted to remember it always as like the day that like literally like I'm like, this is the day that we embarked like on a new journey. Like this symbolizes a big change. And it was so different. It's not what I imagined. And I think it was like kind of like a shock to my system because it's not what I imagined it would be like. I was just, and I was almost like, you know, I think like with any change that happens, like you go through like these different stages. You're like, why does it have to be this way? I wanted things to go this way. Like, this is different than what I had planned. You know, like I was a little bit angry and, you know, why can't my kid's journey be like everybody else's kid's journey? And so, you know, there was like all of these different emotions. And then I finally came around to like the decision, like I'm going to homeschool. And so many people have asked me, well, why are you homeschooling? And maybe because they knew that it was never my plans. But I always say, you know, it's like, I think as parents, like all that we can do is like, we have to do what's best for our child. And like, for me, like, I think a lot of people, like, they are like, oh, you know, and I've met some of the people and like this in homeschooling that they think that they're better than somebody because somebody else's kid goes to school. And I'm like, that's just not what it's about for me. Like, you know, like I think every parent has to do what's like best for their kid, you know.
And they're not cookie cutter.
And it's not cookie cutter. And what's good for one, I was just talking to a friend yesterday, she homeschools her oldest and her youngest is in school and like,
oh wow.
You know, and it's because if you truly approach it from that perspective, like, you know, it's, you know, what can I do that's best for my child?
So she has one homeschooled, which is the older one, and the youngest one goes to...
Right, because that's what's best for her.
Wow.
You know? And, you know, for us, it's been also a gift. It's been a tremendous change because obviously I'm with my kids 24/7. I have a lot of help, as you know. You know, obviously I have my mom that's retired and she's a big help and she's, you know, with us a lot. But it's a change. It's a change because I also am not a teacher. I didn't study to be a teacher. And so having to shift from being like a parent to also being a teacher, although I do believe like as a parent, we're always teaching anyway, right? And so, but just shifting so many perspectives and like, I think it's so funny because I think as a mom, I always imagined that I was going to be the one like that was always teaching my child something. But in this year, like our first year of homeschooling, what I've learned is like, I think I learned so much more from him than he learned from me. And that in and of itself is like a change. It's like a change of perspective because, you know, I've had to, you know, I also went into it thinking, oh, I'm going to do this curriculum because this is what you know. And then now I changed curriculums because I'm like, you know, that's not really how he learns. And I wanted to just like bring school to him and that's not really how he learns. And that's okay too, you know, and like, and so we are starting a new curriculum and I'm really embracing the change. I became a tutor for his like cohort on Wednesdays. And, you know, it's like, oh, let's just go full in. But like just the ways that I've grown and learned from him about like how to have a love of learning, how to like explore, and like how when you truly love something, it's like you're never really working, you know, you're never really like to him. I mean, I think I've shared this with you. He loves animals. Do you know this, Julian? He loves animals.
Well, didn't he have a zookeeper?
Yeah, we did a Wildcats birthday party for him. Yeah, all about wild animal, and like he loves animals, and he has a capacity to learn. Last night he was telling us about an animal that Rich and I had never heard of, and I've learned now not to question like
what was it? I want to know.
I don't even know. I can't even say the name. It's something with a C. And I was like, are you sure that's a real animal? And we're just like, don't say that too much because we always have to eat our words. Like every time we question this kid, he like knows about a different animal. And then like, you know, he like dives deep into it and he's like, yes, it's real. And it's from the big cat family. And like, he's just like telling us about. And then Rich's like, I'm going to look this up because like, this is like too much, you know? And he was right. Like it is a real animal.
But then how did he learn about it if you hadn't
because
really
he
taught
like
it?
watches these little films about, now he was really into Wildcrafts. Now he's into Leo the Ranger.
Okay.
And he's, but I love watching it's interesting because his learning is taking place. So then now he went to the library yesterday with my mom while Selena was in speech therapy. And he's like really into big cats now. So he's like, we're going to learn about the habitats that big cats live in. And he made my mom find a book about each of the big cats. So they got a book about cougars. They got a book about leopards. They got a book about cheetahs. They got a book about tigers. I mean, I'm talking about so that's how he dives deep into these things. So I'll read something to him one time in a book and he remembers it forever. And so he'll remember these things and tell me about them later. And he just then he'll ask different people. So part of it is how kids learn. And so it's just been such a big change for me because I went to traditional school my whole life. And so and my mom's a teacher. She's a teacher her whole career. And so then now this is a really different way of learning. It's totally different. It's very much, I always say parent-led, but it's really child-led. It's and so I see even myself having to change my perspective of no, but this is not how you do school. No, you sit down and you ring the bell and then this year I said, no, you know what? I'm going to embrace that I am truly doing this because this is what's best for my child. And then I have to embrace then that it's going to look different than what I thought it would be and so, starting our days, last year I tried to really make it school. I would ring a little bell and we would sit at the table. I'm not even joking. We would do the pledge.
That's what I would do.
A prayer.
I'm so
right. And then this year I'm already seeing it's just so, I'm okay, this is instead of creating, so I've had to change my mindset.
Not to be so rigid.
From a rigid routine, to creating a rhythm. I
like that.
That these are our priorities for the day, but maybe we'll do this first. And maybe today you really need to go outside and jump and have PE first before we tackle math, and then also realizing and knowing that for his development, he's still so little and that he doesn't necessarily have to do all this rigid schoolwork. It's he's 5. And so he learns through play and watching his imagination soar in that way. And I was telling Rich, I'm I think Julian creates the most amazing imaginary worlds when he plays. I love listening to him because the things that he creates with his mind are so amazing. And I just love hearing him talk out loud and talk through it. And so just he made a zoo the other day, and I don't know if you saw our stuffy lunch that we had with all his stuffed animals that are animals because he's obsessed with animals. So he just added a hummingbird to his collection. We earned a hummingbird, but it's even just changing my perspective on okay, that's learning. He's learning through imaginary play. He's learning things. He's learning how to communicate better. He's learning how to research things, and he's we're learning the scientific method by asking great questions. And it's just been such a big change in my life that I never imagined, but then also the blessings that have come from it.
So how did that change, right? Change this path that I think we as adults we all have a path planned out, even though we don't necessarily know how we're gonna get there, but you kind of have things laid out. I think that's natural instinct for us.
It's so interesting because I think it's so true. Obviously we imagine, okay, this is how it's gonna go, and this is the 5-year plan, and this is and then also of course this change affects more than just him. It affects our whole family life. It's changed how I think of success in my personal business, for sure. I've also found myself leaning on women who've done it and who are doing it. I have a really good friend who's in the same business that I am, who homeschooled her 4 kids, you know, and earned a pink Cadillac, you know. And so like I find myself like leaning on, okay, because this doesn't change, you know, other goals and things that I have and desires, but it draws on so much of me, and it pulls on so much of me. And then it's like, how can I change my perspective on time, you know?
That's what I was gonna say. It has to affect,
of course,
the time that you have available.
Yeah.
Your time management, how you use it, because that takes a big chunk
Uh-huh.
of your day, of your attention,
Mm-hmm.
that you might have been able to put into something else.
And it's funny because I think that when I think of it and I think of myself, the times that I am the most like productive or purposeful is when my time is constrained. And that's a personality thing. Okay, so like my personality is that I tend to, I think, work better under moments like when I'm
That you have limited time and you know you have to get that much done.
Yes. And so I think what I've began to do is just, okay, these are the pockets of time that
Got it.
I have. And so like this is my pocket of time where I am, you know, mommy teacher, you know, and this is the pocket of time where I am, you know, wife Madi, and this is the pocket of time where I am businesswoman Madi, and this is the pocket of time when I have for myself that I don't want to talk to anybody, you know, like this is the time that I edge out for quiet time. And it's like really about changing my perspective on that too, like priorities. I will say too though, it's interesting because I think for me, I always imagined, oh, you know, now I'm also changing my perspective on a lot of things like, well, we can take family vacations whenever, because I mean, I don't have to wait for school to be out, because I can do school anywhere. And so then like there's so many changes that come with that, like in that flexibility, and then you begin to dream about different things. And I've seen how it's like how united our family unit is because of it. And then how like he gets to try different things and do different things because of that choice, and that I think are good for him. Again, like it's all about like, this is the way I think, you know, I'm doing it because I think it's what's best for my son. And so even though it's not how I imagined it, like there's so many other changes that are occurring because of that one decision that then are like blessing our family, or blessing, you know, my business, or blessing, you know, him, blessing his sister. You know, she gets so much time with him. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but this is a good moment to segue into that. You know, maybe you know, we're going through that situation where, you know, there's some developmental delays, but because she has access to Julian like all day, well, he is actually the best person for her to be around
and to teach her.
Right. And like he teaches her things that, I mean, I try to do a million times with her and she ignores it, you know, doesn't pay attention, you know. And so like even just like now as we're navigating some of those things, like watching him get her attention, getting him, you know, he taught her finally how to give besitos, you know, and like now she goes around licking you know, giving everybody open mouth kisses because that's what he taught her to do. And it's like, I'm like, great, could we not have taught her to do that? But you know, it's awesome to see their closeness and the way that she's growing too by watching him. And that's a blessing, you know. And then I also think of like the blessing that it is, you know, because we live in a multi-generational home, the blessing that my grandmother was just sick this week. And it really made me think of like, oh my God, she's getting old. And that's actually probably a good segue into the next conversation we're gonna have. But like, you know, the blessing that it's been for her to have a lot of access to my kids.
Right.
Because he's not at school, he's there. And I was just thinking, this week, I'm like, you know, she's not going to be here forever. And I'm hoping that I'm giving him a tremendous gift in that I don't know how much longer in his life she'll be around, but I hope and pray that he'll have such like concrete memories of, you know, we created a family tree. That was one of our projects this week. And we created a family tree, and then he showed her. And he goes, that's you, Dada, that's you in the family tree. And like, I just pray that like these moments that we're creating together are cementing something in his life and a strong foundation in him. And, and it changes obviously the way that we school him. It changes the way that I parent him because I have to be both things. But also the way that it's like changing me and making me more patient and like stretching my own mind, because I think sometimes, like you were saying, like we think that everything has to be linear and we have like this really concrete plan, and then when it doesn't go that way, like it's like that shock to our system. But then like maybe there is a different choice that is just as beautiful and just as wonderful and can have all the hidden blessing, like all these hidden blessings in it, that we never imagined. Like,
no, and like you said, when you started it off with this more rigid routine.
right.
I mean, it was probably enough of a shock to you, even now changing your mindset that you were even going to homeschool.
Right.
So, especially having a mom that was a teacher.
Yes.
I'm sure, it was
She
like the
still is a shock to her
routine
system.
and this is how it works. And,
Yeah.
I'm sure you asked for her guidance too, I would imagine. So to see and to be open to the fact that you even had to change things further.
Mm-hmm.
I think what I heard from you is just how open you were to those changes in your life and your family's life. That is something we learn as we get older.
Yeah.
Because I think when you're younger, it's not that you purposely do it, but it is. I guess it's just like, this is my goal. This is how I get there. It's also, I think, they're more linear decisions at that age. You know what I mean? Like, it's like you go to school, you finish high school, you go to college, you pick your major, it's a lot more linear. It's very rare when they veer off and be like, okay, well, I don't want to go to college, or I don't want to this, or when that's what's, been embedded in their mind for so long. So I think that the decisions at younger ages are more linear. And as you get older, that there's so many different things that you have to juggle in your life, it starts changing. You realize there's a lot of other things involved.
Right.
It's also not, once you have a family, it's not just you anymore.
Right.
So all these decisions that you make no longer follow that straight line.
Right.
And change is inevitable. Change is constant.
Yes.
Even within the choice that you made, there had to be changes there.
Right.
So I think that we learn to be open to them. And that's one of the hardest things, is to just be a lot more accepting of those changes.
And it's funny because like even that shift in mindset, like what you're talking about, like just like being open to like, it doesn't all have to fit in this box that I created. Like this mental box that I'm like, this is the box and my life has to fit perfectly in this box. And like just being able to like break down that box and say, okay, it's, it doesn't have to. And I will say, like for me, and this is something that I'm so grateful to my husband, because he is not confined by the opinions of what other people think. Like he just is not somebody that cares about that at all. He's like, you like me, you don't. It doesn't really matter what you think about me, because this is who I am, and he always says, he's like, this is who God made me, and he thinks I'm great, so it doesn't really matter what you think. He just like has like this perspective. And I am someone that, I'm a little bit, I don't really necessarily, I haven't always wanted to be this way, but I am someone that tended to care a lot about what people thought about me. And it was something I struggled with for a very long time. And, Rich would always say, he's like, it doesn't matter what people think of you. That person's not living your life. That person's not raising your children. That person's not paying your bills. That person's not, it's not their dream. It's not their family. It's not their child. It's yours. And so like I had to also like remove that lid from my brain and say, it doesn't matter what somebody else thinks about my decision.
Right.
Because this is my life, and this is my family, and this is my child. And so that was a major change in perspective for me.
Right.
And so that's what I also mean. Like, I feel like God has grown me even. I feel like I learned more in like this year, homeschooling than even Julian did. And, I love what you said that, it's just like, we become more, I think, open to change as we get older and more mature. Because we know it's like that's just how it is,
No, and it's inevitable. And, you mentioned about your grandmother and how lucky and blessed you all are to have her there. And the fact that your children have such constant access to her.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we've been discussing to bring up, because life goes through phases.
Yes.
Which is how I said, change is constant, it's inevitable. And one of the changes for me is having parents that are now elderly,
aging. Yeah.
My dad will be turning 86 now, and my mother will be turning 80. I'm not doing the math, but
right.
Anyhow, they're getting older. COVID hit really hard.
Yeah.
When COVID hit, I could see the decline, especially more in my father than my mother. My father was used to being so involved with things outside of the house.
Right.
So when he had to stop that, he never got back into it. So there's been a lot of mental decline, a little bit of physical decline. So that's one of the things that is very prominent in people my age now, that their parents are older. You're having to see this, which we weren't used to before, because, they were like the strong ones and the ones that were always there supporting. And now there's like this small shift that's starting to happen where they can't necessarily do all the things that they were doing. But I don't want to get into it now, because I do want that to be something we talk about soon. But I did have a friend also who recently had to go through that. So hopefully when we meet again,
yes,
that could be one of the changes that we talk about for those of us.
And that's such a big change. Like, and I think you're saying it's so true. Like that change, we go through these changes. Like, it's like you go from this focus of, and you're going through these two changes, right? So it's like you raised your girls. Now you're in that stage where your first one went to college, and now that change of aging parents and all of that emotion and what that brings, and that shift from being the child to almost being the caretaker. And that's something that I think we need to explore, because it's such a big change in our lives. And it just goes to show you that no matter what stage of life you're in, change is inevitable, and it's going to come, and it comes no matter what. And so, like, we just, I think, I can't wait to hear your perspective on that next time, because I think so many people are in that place, or will be, because it's going to come, that, how can we prepare emotionally, yeah,
and prepare in all the other aspects that come with it, because it's not just emotional preparation when it comes to having elderly
So I want
parents.
you to think about, in terms of that change of, aging parents, like, what is that thing, and you don't have to, don't answer now, but what are all the things that you're having to think about as you're thinking of, okay, this major change in my life. So
okay,
I can't wait.
And by the way, if anybody has questions about
homeschooling, absolutely, comment
and let her know, because it's important to have a group of parents
talking
that
about
understand.
Communities. And I think, I'll end with this, that if you're facing one of these decisions, you're like, I don't know if this is a great decision for me and my family, reach out, because I'm happy to pray for you and pray with you and answer questions, because I think sometimes we just need somebody who's done it. So,
Awesome.
Yay.